Hey Pintriti, this is Bunny here with the latest news and announcements. First up, second mark and parent grades are closing soon. So if you need help, you can go to talk to your teacher during intervention or go to PT help desk. Have you heard this sound during your class? Well, if you did, that means start saving up your dojo points if you want to win cool prizes. We're going to have more information about that soon, so stay tuned. Up next, we sat down with City Council member Isaiah Thomas to discuss some important events with our country. So take a listen.
Good afternoon, Miracle. Good seeing you again. My name is Councilmember Isaiah Thomas. I'm a council member at large in the city of Philadelphia. I represent the entire city. I'm one of 5 Democrats who serve on council at large. Um, Thank you for having me.
What consequences, if any, should Trump face after the riot?
Impeachment and charged. There's a phenomenal documentary that I encourage young people to watch. It's entitled The Chicago 7. And that is a great, that gives great historical context on a law that specifically deals with inciting a riot and the consequences that has historically come from inciting a riot. So I think he should be impeached. I think he should be charged, and I think he should be jailed because that's what the Constitution in law enforcement has done in the past for people who've done less.
How do the recent events at the Capitol take away from the focus on local issues such as the ones we spoke about during our last interview?
A week, 2 weeks ago, the main focus on the federal level was stimulus checks. People need help. People need money. People need support. When we were leading into the Georgia runoff in the Senate, the biggest thing that everyone was talking about was stimulus checks, stimulus checks, stimulus checks. The terror attack on the Capitol has completely dominated the news, has taken our attention away from the things that average everyday Americans and families need to survive the unfortunate crisis that we're taking. So it's a huge distraction from federal issues. It's a huge distraction on a local level because each county and municipality have a number of concerns that's unique to the DNA of their constituents in their city. And it's unfortunate that we have to deal with what we're dealing with right now.
What do you think the new administration should do to unite our country at a time when it is so divided?
So, I mean, look, let's just speak in practical terms, right? It's very difficult for me to have a conflict resolution conversation with the person who did me wrong unless there's some type of justice or reconciliation. So before we even have a conversation about unity, we have to recognize that there was an injustice that took place. The people broke the law. And before we can talk about coming together, the first conversation we need to have is around accountability. And I think too often, especially when people of color are the ones who've been mistreated, we are quick to talk about reconciliation before we talk about accountability. But when people of color are the ones who do something wrong, we're very, very, very quick, swift with the accountability hammer. And often that hammer is banged to the fullest extent of the law. When we're looking at some of the things that some of the terrorists have been charged with, those charges are minuscule. When you look at the fact that they're going to be able to return to their local counties and be charged by local federal prosecutors who will have the discretion to be able to decide how those cases go, you see the writing on the wall that a lot of these people are going to get off with a slap on the wrist, and that's unfortunate. So I don't think we're anywhere in this space to have a conversation about bringing the country together or unity, because before we can move to that space, we have to have a conversation about justice and consequences. And we have to have a conversation about the inequities as it relates to responses from law enforcement during different types of protests. When we see some protests that are predominantly led by Black and brown people, we see a different response from law enforcement. What we seen the other day, not only was the response from law enforcement not adequate, it also wasn't parallel to what we've seen in the past. And most importantly, what we know is that there was a coordinated effort between law enforcement and the terrorists to allow them to occupy the building in the way that they did. So we have a lot of work to do before we can get to unity. I would like to see the next administration appoint a special prosecutor. I would like to see Congress hold joint hearings and have significant dialogue and investigation around what took place. And I would want to see everybody prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law and held accountable. Once that happens, then we could talk about how we bring this country together, if at all possible.
Does this make you question the stability of our democracy going forward?
I think how we respond will determine the perception of our democracy, because this isn't something that we all saw as students and local elected officials. This is something that the entire world witnessed. So I think the entire world is going to watch how we handle this situation, and that will definitely speak to the credibility of our current democracy. So I'm watching, but more importantly than just us right here, the entire world is watching.
Does this make you go about your job any differently?
Perspective, yes, but not necessarily from a legislative perspective or from an advocacy perspective, but from a safety perspective, absolutely. I mean, my eyes are wide open, right? Like my head is on a swivel. Those folks who attacked the Capitol, they went to the Capitol to hurt, harm, and put people in danger. They didn't go to peacefully. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some people did go to peacefully protest. I don't want to stereotype everybody that was there, because I wasn't there. And based on the investigation that we see, we know that there are folks who were down there that did not participate in the Capitol terrorist attack. But the number of people who did take part in it, in collaboration with the number of people who are in law enforcement, when you also consider the coordinated effort, right? Like that was very much a coordinated effort. We're told that there were people who were in the Capitol the day before, who were, quote unquote, touring the Capitol the day before, which can't be a coincidence. So, yeah, I move different as it relates to my safety and the safety of my family. We have a coordinated effort with the city of Philadelphia to make sure that, there aren't attacks on elected officials or government buildings, and hopefully we'll be successful. But everything is different in the world of politics and government after that Capitol attack. When you're a young person and you decide to do something wrong, right? Maybe you stole from this candy store. Maybe you peed in the pool, right? When you do something wrong and you get away with it, not only are you more inclined to do it again, when you do something wrong and get away with it, and everybody's seen that you did it wrong and got away with it, you're now empowering more people to do something wrong. So if I go to the candy store and I steal and I bring that candy to school and everybody's wondering, where did you get those skills from? And you tell them, look, I stole it from the candy store. Wait, you stole it and nothing happened? Yeah, I stole it. You go back the next day, steal more Skittles, bring them back to school. Oh, where you 2 days in a row? You have Skittles. Where'd you get them from? Stole it from the candy store. Eventually, at some point, what's the next person going to do? They're going to go steal it from the candy store too, especially if they like Skittles, right? So the people who believe in the ideology that those folks who attacked the Capitol have, right? There has to be somebody who knew that attack on the Capitol was happening, and they said, you know what? I'm not going to steal from the candy store because I'm a little afraid of getting caught. But after watching, right, people go and do it and get away with it, and there not be significant consequences to the level that we should have seen. Now we've incentivized more people who have the same beliefs and the same ideology to act on them, and that puts especially elected officials, Democratic elected officials, in significant danger. So I'm outraged, I'm angry, I'm fearful for my family and I, but I also have to consider the fact that those people were allowed to walk out of the Capitol. It was like, okay, y'all, come on, that's enough now. It's time for y'all to go home. That's outrageous to me. So, my emotions were all over the place when it first happened. My emotions are still all over the place. We've never seen anything like this in the history of my lifetime. And, I want to see accountability. I want to see those folks treated like the terrorists they were when they went down there. And I want to see them prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
How can the city of Philadelphia improve the Capitol Hill situation?
That's a loaded question. And that's, Miracle, that's why you scared me. I don't, you get me, Miracle. I don't know. So I think first and foremost, we did send a letter to the local police department to ask them to investigate whether or not any of our police officers were involved in the terror attack. We also sent a letter to the school district of Philadelphia to monitor whether or not any of our teachers, school police officers, or school officials were a part of the terror attack. We found out recently that there are some SEPTA employees who were at the event. We don't know whether or not they were a part of the terror attack, but we know that they were in D.C. at the time that the event took place. So I think for us in Philadelphia, the first thing we have to do is, thoroughly investigate what level constituents who are paid by our tax dollars had in taking part in a terror attack, because that's what it was. And if anybody doesn't understand why, I can explain it to them. But on the other side, I think here in Philadelphia, we have to look at the people who are in positions of power in the police department, because, you know, we have one officer who was in charge of recruitment, who had, you know, ideologies and comments on social media, in my opinion, that were somewhat disturbing. So we really have to take a close look at what level of government, city government officials participated in it and what level they participated in. Then we have to do a thorough internal examination of who we have as far as working for our city in the position of power that they're in, to make sure that they're not moving a propaganda that's not ideal for the city of Philadelphia. I'll also say, you know, I'm a member of the Police Reform Working Group, and one of the things that we've been screaming about all year is to change Act 111. And Act 111 is the state law that puts us in a position as a local city, whereas though even if we wanted to fire those officers, right, the process of firing them is one that's very tedious, and the likelihood of them getting their job back once terminated is significantly high. So for us on a local level, there are a number of things that we need to do to examine the level of participation that city employees may or may not have had in that particular incident. But then on another level, we really need to change Act 111. So when police officers, like any other profession, right, do something wrong, they're held accountable. If your teacher did some of the things that some of the officers are accused of, your teacher will be fired. There is no Act 111 to protect your teacher. And your teacher, in my opinion, has a job that's just as important, if not more important, than law enforcement. So if your teachers are held to a certain standard, no matter what they believe, they still are held to a certain standard. That standard should be applied to all professions, especially professions that's involved with the safety of our constituents.
What do you have to say to the politicians still claiming voter fraud?
They don't believe it. They know it ain't voter fraud, especially in PA. So it's nothing I can say to them, because at the end of the day, I guess what they're doing is, you know, feeding a fire to their constituents. But this is the thing. If you're in Pennsylvania, Republicans won Pennsylvania. Biden won the top of the ticket. But besides Biden and Josh Shapiro, every other Democrat statewide lost. Our state legislators, state reps, and state senates, Republicans won that. So if you're in Pennsylvania and you're claiming voter fraud, well, is it voter fraud when Republicans win? Because Republicans won Pennsylvania. So when people talk about voter fraud in Pennsylvania, to me, that's the wildest accusation, because when you look down the ballot, right, that in Pennsylvania, when you look down the ballot, what had to have happened is that Republicans in this state said, you know, I'm going to vote Republican for my state rep and for my state senator and maybe some other local positions. But when it came to president, they said, I'm voting for Biden, because, you know, clearly the writing was on the wall that how the current, because he's current, how the current president is moving is not ideal to their beliefs. But they know it's not no voter fraud. They even say it. They say, oh, well, there are all these people who believe it's voter fraud, so we owe it to them to investigate. Well, we've already investigated. They say that Donald Trump appointed more judges to the different level of courts than any president in recent history. Those same judges that he appointed ruled against them, ruled against other Republican legislators. So this whole idea of voter fraud, I wouldn't even call it a myth. It's a lie. It just doesn't exist. And if voter fraud was real and it really did happen, then why did all the Republicans accept their wins? They're just stoking, you know, the following of the president and his dangerous rhetoric and his information that's not accurate and it's not true. Look, the only voter fraud that I know that took place was the call between the president and elected officials in Georgia. That phone call alone, if that was me, if I called my commissioner or anybody that was an elected official and I had that same call and it was recorded, I would be arrested the next day.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for sitting down and talking with us. It is now the most important moment. Shout outs. Woo woo.
Monet and Left Foot.
Whoa,
Yeah.
another day.
Dab seem like the back of a matchbook. That if SS will fold you and your MacBook. Close shows shut you down before we go backwards. Act up, and whether we high or low, we gonna get back up like the Dow Jones and NASDAQ. Sort of like a dog in an ass crack. Come on.
I tip on alligators and little rattlesnakers, but I'm another flavor, something like a Terminator. Ain't no equivocating. I fight for what I believe. Why you talking about it? Just talking about it. Some calling me a sinner, some calling me a winner. I'm calling you to dinner, and you know exactly what I mean. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You can rock or you can leave. Watch me tip without you. No, no, no. Whether am I alone? Whether am I alone? I gotta tip on the tightrope. Baby, baby, whether am I alone? I got to tip on the tightrope. Now, baby, tip on the tightrope. You can't get too high. I said you can't get too low. 'Cause you get too high. No, you surely be low. 1, 2, 3, help. Yeah. Yeah. Now shut up. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Now put some voodoo on it.
okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the funkiest horn section in Metropolis. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We call that classy brass. I gotta keep my
Keep up the good work, everyone. And before we run, let's check out a message from TJ.
There. Fantastic. Let me see it.
No, wait, I changed my mind.
I'm sure what you've written is fine. Just let me see.
No, don't look. It's not ready.
It's so simple. Only 10 words. What I learned
As
at boarding
always, remember, Wolves, we are in this together. Stay safe. Love you guys. Go Wolves. Bunny out.